الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you? So we are going to do a video on the ultimate success today, right? But we'll quickly begin with a bit of recap. So we started doing these videos about 1.5 years ago, and the first series of video that we did was about happiness, right? And so what's the prerequisite for happiness?
Tranquility.
And what's the prerequisite for tranquility?
True belief.
True belief is the prerequisite for tranquility, right? So we are looking into two aspects of that, the aspects of true belief. The first aspect that we looked into was that what happens if you have true belief, right? Then what happens? So just tell me what happens.
It helps you overcome the fear of the future, helps you with meditation.
And positive thinking. And
connection to all that exists.
And
helps you prevent pathological loneliness.
Yeah, so all those are the what happens aspect of the true belief, right? If you have strong belief, so to begin with, happiness, prerequisite is tranquility, tranquility's prerequisite is true faith, and true faith actually leads to like this is the what happens. So what happens, right? It provides you an opportunity to live in the present. It helps you in knowing the purpose of your existence. Connecting to all that exists saves you from pathological loneliness, provides you opportunity for meditation and positive thinking. All this is connected to what happens, right? And ultimately this gives you happiness, right? So today we are going to focus on how it happens. One, how it happens. What's the mechanism? And what's the ultimate goal? Ultimate goal. So we are talking about true belief, right? So what do we believe in actually? What are we supposed to believe in?
Allah, the angels.
Just a sec. So Allah is actually so you have to believe in the Creator, and which is Allah, and then
the angels.
In the angels, and
books.
The books that He has revealed, and
prophets.
The prophets, and
the day of judgment.
The day of judgment, right? So these are the basic beliefs, and we are going to discuss that how this is linked to this belief is not for nothing. It actually helps us achieve human excellence, right? So if you don't have this strong belief, we can't achieve human excellence. That's critical. We're going to discuss that. And then the second aspect, so this is in Arabic, this is called Iman, which is belief. And then the next step is Islam, right? So Iman and Islam, so which is the practice, which is the submission to one true God. But there are a few things that we need to do to complete our practice of the deen, the way of life. So what do we need to do? What do we practice?
Praying.
So the 5 pillars, right? So prayers 5 times a day, then fasting, and then
charity
and Hajj, right? So these are the key pillars of Islam. And then we are going to discuss that how this practice helps us achieve excellence as well. So nothing is disconnected, right? This true belief and then the practice of that is kind of stepping stones. So this is how we are going to discuss this in detail. But this is the stepping stone, which is the basic foundation, true and strong belief, and then the practice, which is Islam, and then finally Ihsan. So this is Ihsan. So today we are going to look into details of how these different aspects are interconnected and how do they actually help us achieve the ultimate goal, the ultimate purpose, and the ultimate success in life, which is achieving human excellence. So let's provide a bit of context from the youth perspective, and then once we have that context, then we'll come back to these three key pillars of the deen of Islam and how it helps us achieve ihsan or human excellence, right? So my first question to you is that let's think about it from the youth perspective, right? What is success and failure? If we ask an average youth out there in the community today, what would be their perception of success and failure? So what is success to you, right? Representing the youth. Take this and write it down there.
If you have a lot of money.
If you have lots of money, then that's one of the indicators of success. All right, what else? Quick.
If you have knowledge.
Okay. If you achieve knowledge and you excel in that, okay, that's a measure of success.
So
and then knowledge,
like Bill Gates.
So this is an individual, but what was the measure of his success? There was
Microsoft.
His Microsoft skill and knowledge and combination of that with his marketing skills, right? Okay, that's fine. Ronaldo, so he is famous, right? So fame is a success measure, right? So write down fame. So you're saying that lots of money, success in life in a particular field, all those types of things, right? And then what is failure to you? What would we consider as failure?
Someone who's in drugs, doing drugs, and in gangs, or in company of really bad people. So
it depends on the company you keep, right? So if you are in a bad company, right? If you are in a bad company, or if you get involved in wasting your time, going to the extremes, joining gangs and drugs and not excelling in the fields like education and other things, right? So that's considered as a failure. And that's why I knew that would be one of the indicators of failure. So what I've done is I've brought just one story as an example of failure, right? And this is related to Ottawa, right? So here in Ottawa, the situation is that look at this headline. It says that Muslim murder spree in Canada's capital. So mostly what's happening is that over the past couple of years that there are shootings happening and people are killing each other, and majority of them, both the victims and the perpetrators, are Muslim or majority of them Muslim youth, right? So that's a major issue, and that's an indicator of failure, right? So I just wanted to discuss with you why is this happening, and then what's the solution, right? And the solution would link us back to where we started, and then we'll explain that how achieving human excellence should be the ultimate objective of our lives, right? So why the answer is that there are several risk factors which affect youth and other in certain communities, in certain socioeconomic situations, in certain circumstances, that they end up going to the extreme and committing those crimes or become victims of those crimes. So there are so many risk factors, and there are so many protective factors. So if you are studying criminology, then you'll get the answer to why this is happening, right? So the general perception of those Muslim youth, right, and probably something wrong with whatever they're learning, or they're getting radicalized, or all those kinds of things. So that's not the case. There are so many different factors which lead to that. But what I'm going to discuss, so I'm not going to discuss these with you today. What I'm going to discuss with you today is that we have one of the best mechanism, one of the best protective factor, right? That if you use that effectively, then particularly Muslim youth they won't end up in situations like these. So now the question is, what could be that main protective factor which can save youth from falling into those kinds of situations?
The constant reminders to come back to the middle.
All right, so how do those constant reminders happen?
Say you're doing something bad, and then the call to prayer happens, and then you leave everything so that you come back and do a good deed, you pray, and then you'll be less likely to go back to the sin.
So the condition is that you would be praying, you'd pay attention to the call for prayer if you are what? A believer, right? If you are a Muslim and you're believing in the call for prayer, and then when you hear the call for prayer, either on your cell phone or in the mosque, then you'll go for prayer, and then that would be a reminder for you. But then you'll benefit from that reminder if you are a believer, right? So the key piece is what? The key piece is the belief, right? So most of the youth, particularly the Muslim youth, who end up in those kinds of situations, they are believers. So there is something missing, right? And what is missing is that they are living in denial, or what we can say is that they are living in their fantasy. They're living in their fantasy world, away from the reality. So they are away from the reality, and that's why they're away from their belief and the practice of the deen as well. So then what happens? Tell me.
They end up in a graveyard or hospital or jail. So
based on the facts that are in front of us, they are either ending up in graveyard or in the hospital, or where?
Jail.
Or in jail, behind the bars, right? So there's jail. And then that's the stage. So in this case, this is way too late. When they go to the graveyard, that's the end of the story, right? And that was the end of their short existence, right? And nowhere to come back to the right path. But when they end up in jail, that's an opportunity for them again, right? And what the reality tells us, then that they wake up, right? So the moment they end up in jail, a majority of them, they wake up, right? And when they wake up, where do they come? Back to their true belief. So here is an article that I pulled from our Canadian sources from the where was it published? In the Global News. So there's a chaplain, Ihsan, and he has been working in the Federal Correction Services for quite some time. And his conclusions are that that the overwhelming majority of Muslim inmates who saw their religion as the most important part of their own transformation. So he's saying that for an overwhelming majority of Muslims, they just come back to their true faith, and then that becomes the key source of their transformation, right? And he also says that they have stopped drinking, they have stopped lying, they have stopped cheating, they started praying, they started fasting, and many of them that I've seen have changed their lives around. So then they get this opportunity and they change their lives around. In some cases, what happens is that, like for instance, this story is from US. So he was a young man too. He was 21 years old. He killed someone. He went to the jail, and despite the fact that the victim's family was saying that don't execute him, right? But they finally executed him after 14 years. Meanwhile, he changed his life. He woke up, but that was way too late based on the crime that he had committed, and he paid the price for that crime. But meanwhile, although he was transformed, he was mentoring troubled youth. He saved a few guards from assault. He also prevented some inmates from committing suicide. But their transformation didn't help him, right? So because there was way too late. But some of the inmates or some of the folks, Muslim youth who go to jail, then they have the opportunity to transform their life. In this same story, there's a story of a non-Muslim youth who was an Islamophobe, and he committed some hate crime, right? And he went to jail, and the total opposite happened. He learned about Islam, and he also became Muslim, right? So the point that I was trying to make is that we have the best protective factor for these Muslim youth, provided they wake up before they end up here and benefit from that. Now the question is that they're the best tool available, right? But what is holding them? What is keeping them in their fantasy world? What has happened to them? What's wrong?
They don't know, or they weren't taught.
All right, so they're brought up. I'll say brought up because they're not alone there, right? It's not just the youth problem, it's their parents too. I'm a parent too, right? So if their parent don't raise them, don't teach them, like the concept of achieving human excellence, which is 1/3 of our faith, right? So if they don't teach them, they don't explain the interconnectedness between all these different elements of belief and practice and achieving excellence, then that's a key factor, right? So what will bring them out of that darkness, of that fantasy world? What will be the first thing that they have to remember?
Themselves.
Themselves what?
As believers.
So that they remember that they... Alright, so that's remembrance, right? So do you remember? Now it's the remember thing. Remember who they are, right? Do you remember that Disney World? I asked you to bring a printout with you. Did you bring a printout? Okay, so there's the printout, right? And this is what? This is a screen grab from which movie?
Lion King.
Lion King. And in this scene, what's the striking dialogue here?
Mufasa, Simba's dad, says that
so he's telling him, father is telling his son, because his son forgot who he was. So what is he telling him?
He says, you forgot
he says,
yourself.
Remember. And?
You have forgotten yourself, so you have forgotten me. You're more than you have become.
You have forgotten who you are, and so forgotten me. Look inside yourself, Simba. You are more than what you have become.
You are more than what you have become. So what does that mean? How does this apply to this situation?
Because if they were true believers, then
if they had not forgotten, right? If they had remembered,
then
right?
Then they would have the best mechanism for.
Exactly, and then that would have saved them. So this is the key thing. They've forgotten. They have forgotten what they are, and as a result of that, they are less than what they could be, right? They don't utilize their potential and the tools that they have to achieve human excellence, and that's ultimate success. So the first thing that they have to, both the parents and the youth have to keep in mind is that constant reminder that who they are, so that they don't forget themselves. And if they don't forget themselves, they'll be on the right track. So, but what would be the mechanism, right? It's like everything starts at a very early, young age. You have to have very clear concepts. So I remember from our education that we were taught everything in isolation, like the faith, the belief in angels and the books and the day of judgment, in total isolation from the practice. We were not shown the connection between the true faith and the connection between the practice, and how the practice, that submission, is actually built up on the foundation of true faith, and how those two things actually lead to Ihsan. So if we talk about Ihsan for a second, so I'll write it down here. So what is Ihsan? What's its literal meaning?
To beautify, or to make beautiful.
Beautify, or to make beautiful, right? Or
to do with excellence.
To do with excellence, or doing the best. So this is Ihsan. So how would we do the best? So there's a hadith, a saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that he was asked that what is Ihsan? How did Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, explain Ihsan? That when you worship...
Oh, and when you worship like Allah's, you're watching, you see Allah.
Okay.
But if you can't imagine that much, then imagine that He is watching you.
Alright, so that's the key criteria. And the key thing in that particular saying is what? Just guess. What's the most critical piece in that? So when you worship, he said that when you worship, imagine that you're seeing your Creator. And if you cannot imagine to that extent, then you imagine that He is seeing you. So what's the critical part here?
Allah watching.
Allah is watching, but the other critical piece here is when you do what? When you
pray.
When you worship, when you pray, right? Now, when you worship, right? That's the critical piece. So when you worship in a way as if He is watching. And why you should have this imagination that He is watching me or I'm watching Him. That's critical. Why is that critical?
Because if He's watching you, then...
you'll do the best. Good, very good. So, and the real life example of that?
A police in the middle of the street.
Yeah, go ahead, tell me. So if you
see a police over there,
when you're driving,
slow down.
Exactly. So if you're driving and you're speeding and you saw a police car there, you'll slow down, and you slow down because you see the authority, right? You see the authority. So in this case, the important thing is that you feel yourself in the presence of the authority, the ultimate authority, right? So if you are in the presence of ultimate authority, you won't do anything wrong, right? Good. So now the important piece here is worship, right? So when do you worship?
24/7.
Do we? All right, tell me. How do we pray 24/7? So let's stop here. So if we are praying, if we understand that we are praying 24/7, right? Then it means that we will always have to keep that in mind, that He is watching us, right? And then we won't do anything wrong. But the important piece is to understand that why are we in worship 24/7, and why should we be in worship 24/7? Go ahead, tell me.
Okay, so the hadith is that إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So every action is based on the intention.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you're sleeping, it could be worship, because you could, if your intention is that you wake up so that you can pray,
mm-hmm.
or so you rest so that you have energy to stand up and pray, then even the sleep would be counted as for your good deeds.
Yeah. So the point is, if you're a true believer, right? Then the point is that regardless of whatever you do, right? If your intention is good, that becomes your ibadah, that becomes your worship. So you wake up early in the morning, you're going to school or you're going to work or whatever you do in life. If your intention is good, that becomes, because you can't be praying 24/7. You can't be fasting 24/7. You can't be giving charity 24/7. But whatever you do, if your intention is good, so the hadith that you mentioned, innamal a'malu binniyat, right? So every action depends on your intention. So if your intention is good, that means by that definition, everything that you do during the day or during the night, that becomes your worship. And when you are in worship and you worship in a way that Allah is watching you, then that becomes that takes you to achieve human excellence. So that's the connection to the faith. Another important piece is that some people, so this is the building block, right? So this is the foundation. Some people might say that they don't have to believe to be good, right? Why should I believe? I'll try to be good. I'll try to be moral. I'll try to not do anything unethical. So why should I believe? So you tell me. So why is belief important?
Because when you believe in Allah, and like if you're a Muslim, then you have a goal, like a standard that you follow or reach to.
Yeah.
But so like this is right, this is wrong. But if you don't believe in anything, then any day the majority could rule
and change things, and
things that would be wrong the other day and then good the next day.
Good. That's a very good point. So we are going to come to that. But the subjective and objective morality aspect of it. But let's make it clear here that faith is not just believing in Allah alone, in the Creator alone. Faith is in the angels. Faith is in the books that He has revealed. Faith is in the Prophet that He has sent. So when you believe in the books that He has revealed, right, you are believing in a standard. You're believing in guidance, right, that He has provided, and then you follow that guidance, and that becomes the foundation for your morality and acting ethically. That becomes the touchstone for checking every single thing that you do, whether that's right or wrong. But in the absence of that, right, the morality aspect of it, in the absence of true belief, it means if you're not only believing in the one true God, but you're also not believing in the books that He has revealed, so that you don't have any standard to begin with. And then you don't believe in the prophets, so there's no guidance for you. There's no objective moral standard for you, right? So your morality is subjective. Like what? Just give me an example.
If I like chocolate ice cream, you like mango ice cream.
Yeah. So say it clearly.
If I like chocolate ice cream and you like peach ice cream.
Yeah, good.
Then we both like the ice cream, which is the object, but the flavor, it's depending on our tastes, which is subjective.
So if there is no God, right, then there is no objective reference point, and all that we are left with is one person's viewpoint, which is no more valid than anyone else's viewpoint, right? So that's why in the absence of belief in the revealed guidance as objective reference point for moral values, there's no standard for assessing our decisions. And this kind of morality becomes subjective. It's not objective. The preference is in the subject, right? In you and me and others, right? It's not in the object. Also, it doesn't apply to all people. You don't have any moral obligations. You don't have any duties, and you don't have any responsibilities. You don't have any incentive to do good or bad, right? Because there's no ultimate accountability. And to link that to your example that you gave me about the police officer and speeding, the speed radars that they have on the streets, what are they for?
To remind you?
To remind you that you are either overspeeding or you're going the right speed. So that's an external mechanism to remind you of your roles and responsibilities, to remind you of your guilt, right? But in Islam, you have that internal mechanism, that one you feel in the presence of your God, one, and then you have moral standards, you have a book that provides you guidance, right? And you follow that, so you have that internal motivation, and then you have that internal mechanism to stop you from doing anything bad because you believe in the Day of Judgment. So that's what the belief is, the critical thing, right? So that was about the why belief is important in this case, right? And strong belief is important. But then to make a link with the practice, right? Why is practice? What's the importance of practice here? Like, why do we pray? Why do we fast? Why do we do charity? What role do they play?
In strengthening your belief.
They strengthen your belief. They are constant
reminders.
They are constant reminders. So just like the radar out there, the speed radars out there in the streets, right? So that's the external mechanism in this society to remind you of your guilt. But here, when you practice, so those are constant reminders for you to keep yourself in the middle and don't go to the extreme. And then finally, about the Ihsan, when I ask you about the success in life, right? Do you see Ihsan over there? Do you see excellence over there? No, there is some excellence, right?
Excellence in one thing, like
where?
Ronaldo only in sports.
So Ronaldo perfected his talent, right, in sports. What's his name? Bill Gates. He perfected his intellectual powers to develop software and then use his marketing skills to take his business to the best level that he could. But to have ultimate success in life, you have to strive. It's not necessary that you'll achieve success in ultimate success or ultimate excellence in every single thing that you do, but you have to strive both in your social life, in your spiritual life, in your economic life, and your relationships with others and all those areas. And then you strive with good intention, and then you get the reward for that. The reward for that in this world is what?
Tranquility, happiness.
So you're successful, you get tranquility, and then you ultimately you're happy. And in the hereafter, Allah says that hal jazaa'ul ihsan illa al ihsan, right? So you do your best in this world, and He'll reward you with the best in the hereafter. And that's the motivation that keeps you going, right? So if we understand the connection between these three areas and how they can lead us to ultimate success, then in our daily lives, we won't have any fear, we won't have any frustration, we won't have any depression and anxiety, for instance, from your youth perspective, right? When you go to school and they give you a huge homework, you have already homework from 3 teachers, and a 4th teacher comes and he gives you a huge assignment, which is due tomorrow, right? So how would you take that? If you're a true believer, how would you consider that?
You take it as an opportunity to excel.
Good. Very good. So you consider that as an opportunity to do it in the best way possible, right? And based on your intentions, you'll get reward for that. So if you are connected, if you are a true believer, right? You consider those. I'm working, right? For instance, right? And someone comes to me and says that, could you do this in a week? This is very, very important, right? This happened to me a few times. And then they asked me that, how soon can you do that? And I said that I can do it tomorrow, right? Because there's one night in between, and I'll do it. And they were surprised because they had in their mind that this will take a week, right? When those kinds of things, challenging things come to you, so instead of getting frustrated and looking into your job description, oh, this is not in my job description, or you getting frustrated, oh, I've already huge assignments from other teachers, and this teacher is not giving us something on top of all that, then you get frustrated, right? And that leads to ultimately to depression and anxiety and all those kinds of things. But if you are a true believer, you take that as an opportunity for achieving excellence and doing it the best that you can. So this is an important area. There are about 200 verses in the Quran about ihsan, right? And ihsan in different shapes and different ways, from wabil walidaini ihsana, to treat your parents with ihsan, with excellence of your behavior, to treatment of your neighbors and in your work life and all those kinds of things. But the thing is that we need to understand, the youth, we need to understand that that's an important 1/3 of our faith, and there is a connection between all these three areas, and everything is linked to our daily life. So nothing is for nothing, right? Everything that we do, everything that's been prescribed has a purpose, and it leads us to achieve
excellence,
ultimate success and excellence, right? So if we have that understanding, and we work with our youth, and our parents take that responsibility and guide them in that direction and make things clear for them, right? This, if you're praying 5 times a day, it's not just praying for the sake of praying, right? It's connected to so many other things, and this is a reminder to keep you on the straight path and come back to the middle, doing whatever is happening in your life. Then we'll achieve ultimate success. So what's the key point that you'll remember from all this? If you have to give a message to your youth, what's the most important thing that you learned from here, and which will help them understand the bigger picture?
Is to remember who they are.
This is very important. This is very important. Remember who you are.
As believers, and if they're into a fantasy world, then to get out and come to the reality before they go to a graveyard, hospital, or a jail.
Good.
And once they truly realize that they're believers, to take to learn the 3 steps in together, not separately, and to take everything to excellence.
Good. And if they do that, then they'll be ultimately
happy and
contented and successful, right? Thank you so much. I think we have done it. Take care.